Australia's Foreign Minister Bob Carr. This is the last sitting week for the Australian Parliament before the federal election on September the 14th. If the polls are correct, Tony Abbott's opposition coalition will win easily, bringing a new generation of politicians to government for the first time. Josh Frydenberg and Kelly O'Dwyer are two of the rising stars of Mr Abbott's opposition. Kelly O'Dwyer, Josh Frydenberg, welcome.
Great to be with you, Jim.
Nice to be here.
The first question to you, Kelly. A week or so ago I was speaking to a young Indonesian woman in Jakarta, a bit like you I think, a politically engaged professional with an optimistic outlook for her country, but when I asked her this about the biggest risk to Indonesia's future, she said complacency. I wonder, if I put the same question to you, what would your answer be?
Well, look, I think that's a very good observation, and like you say, like her, I have a very, very optimistic view of the future of our country. I think Australia has every right to be incredibly ambitious for our future. But if I was to spell out what I think one of the greatest challenges for us going forward, I think that is a complacency around our economic position and the fact that our very strong fiscal position going into the 2007 election is one that has been overturned in recent times. We can't assume that the good times will continue, that the mining boom will continue, and that we will continue to grow the pie unless we do certain things to ensure that we can restore confidence.
Does that mean that you're a bit pessimistic about the economic outlook in China, or that Australia has simply become too dependent on China as a cash cow?
No, I'm simply suggesting that there are things that we can do here, absent of our international relations, that can improve our economic position quite markedly. One example of that is to do with the sheer amount of red and green tape and the regulation that's been imposed on business. And I think restoring our economic position, restoring surpluses, putting some money back in the bank, being able to prepare for the future, like we did in the past with the Future Fund, is again a great challenge that we'll have not only in the next 3 years, but in the 10 and 20 years ahead of us.
Josh, you spent a lot of time in the Asia-Pacific. You've just come back from Japan, in fact. What do young Asians say to you about the state of Australian politics? And I'm talking about both sides of the aisle here. It's pettiness all round, the addiction to point scoring over substance that we've seen particularly in the last 3 or even half dozen years.
Well, I think they're looking to the future, and we've got an election in Australia on September the 14th, and hopefully that will restart the clock in terms of, you know, the quality of domestic political debate. But when you ask me about what do other countries think of Australia, particularly when I visited Japan, it was an extremely optimistic view of Australia. They see our economic strength, but more particularly how we can prosper going forward if we make the right domestic reforms. They see us as an important strategic partner in the region. We share a US alliance with Japan, and also they look to Australia as being very optimistic people with great qualities and obviously sitting on a great amount of domestic wealth and resources.
In terms of foreign policy directions, Josh, what do you think is missing at the moment from engagement with this most important region, for not only for Australia but for the rest of the world?
Well, we'd like to see more bilateral free trade agreements. I think that's an important element. There's the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is working at a multilateral level given the failure of the Doha round, and Australia has previously been successful in securing free trade agreements like with the United States. But there is unfinished work. Indonesia, India, Japan, China, Korea, we need to conclude bilateral free trade agreements with them.
A very general question. As you probably both know, there was a poll just come out from the Lowy Institute, which suggests that fewer than half, less than 50% of people under the age of 30 in Australia think democracy is the best form of government. What's gone wrong in Australia that is the view of a very significant cohort coming through? Josh?
Well, I'd actually think the vast majority of people believe in democracy and its strength, so I'm not so sure about that poll. But, you know, we look to...
Well, it's consistent. This is the second year running that this has happened, and this is something people around the world are dying for, the kinds of privileges that people in Australia have. Why are we so careless, or so many people so careless about a very good, very fine system of government.
Well, maybe we take it for granted. Maybe that's the point, that we don't really always appreciate the great freedoms that we enjoy. But you know, I look at the young people in Australia and I see that they're really ready to even more deeply engage with the region. And one of the policies that Kelly and I know well that the Coalition is putting forward is for a reverse Colombo plan, which is to see a much larger number of secondary students learn a second language, predominantly an Asian language. We're down to 13% now. We want to get up to 40% plus. But also to see thousands of Australian students or young people working or learning in the region, just like we used to in the 50s bring so many of the future leaders to Australia to be educated at our institutions. And I think that's very exciting because I think that's creating a level of engagement, a level of cultural appreciation and understanding.
But also
which can
a legacy,
then, absolutely
as well.
legacy.
I think that's an excellent point, and we have legacies that last for generations. The people-to-people engagement is incredibly important, and it has been a primary focus of our governments in the past. And Menzies, with the Colombo plan, was able to do that quite spectacularly.
One final question, Josh. In terms of your own experience, obviously you came into the business with considerable degree of idealism. Has the experience of being a Member of Parliament actually changed that at all? Do you feel that the reality is somewhat less than what you imagined? No,
in fact. I'm motivated as a result of this first term in the Parliament to really make a difference, like Kelly is, maybe locally, but also hopefully nationally over time. And I believe that politicians of both main political persuasions in Australia, they enter into politics for the right motives. There's no doubt about that. They actually have a view about what they believe should be the priorities for this country. We always differ, though, on which route we want to take to get there, and that's where the debate is. And it should be around those ideas and what sort of Australia we want to help shape for the future.
Thanks to both of you. Kelly O'Dwyer, thank you very much.
Jim.
Josh Frydenberg,
Thanks, Jim.
thank
Thanks,
you.
Phil.
Yeah, thanks, Josh.
Been a pleasure.
Thank you.